Well, I didn't do displays like I usually do every year for Christmas, as you can see behind me. But that doesn't mean I can't wear some of my amazing Christmas sweaters. I mean, come on. Yeah. Don't worry, this won't be up the entire video. Petrichor by Keor. So, Keor is the French kind of solo project from Victor Miranda Martin, and this is his second release. The first release I hadn't really heard before. It's not really on any streaming services that I subscribe to. That was the Hive Mind, and this one's been making its circuit around a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm involved with within the progressive rock side of things. It's really making its round within the prog snob, so I had to check it out. I had to find out what all the hubbub was, and I think I'm gonna stop making it rain here for a second. Let me just turn this thing off. So I sat down and I listened to it, and I was really blown away. This is a really great album. I'm gonna spoil it right here and say that this is a fantastic album. If it weren't for a few things, it would have easily made my top 5 albums of the year. I love the acoustic approach to a lot of these songs without sacrificing a symphonic approach. I love how big these songs sound. I love how all-encompassing these songs are. They blend that very intimate acoustic guitar, acoustic sound set with a very grandiose and epic scale. And I think the marriage between the two is something that I always love. This is one thing that I always loved of Christian Bruhn's music within his Invention series, within his Black Codex, within his solo work with Just Chris. This is why I really love some of the darker moments of like Steven Wilson's set. That first track of Petrichor, it goes through a lot of ebbs and flows. This was very similar to something that Galasphere 347 was doing earlier this year, where each movement just built upon the last, and within the like 11 plus runtime of the first track, each one builds upon the next, and the transitions are held very well. Each one brings in that new symphony of sound, and it's padded with such great acoustic noodling while surrounded with this synth wave soundscapes, and that album artwork really showcases what you are expecting here. It feels like you're walking through this epic forest. The only thing though is that final refrain, that final transition. I don't know if it's helmed very well. It trips just slightly because we get into that build-up, it gets more chaotic, and this is another thing that they handle really well, is the chaotic resolution. So when they're building up that chaos, I feel like that resolution isn't quite satisfied, or like it's satisfied, but I feel like the build-up doesn't quite, like the two are missing something. Like it feels like they cut out a section of music that transitions the two pieces, because it feels like the two pieces don't quite interlock as well as I was hoping it was. Now my two favorite tracks are actually the two middle tracks of Snivel by the Pond and Terrence. I love Snivel by the Pond in that it's that creepy, innocent waltz. Like this is something that Christian Bruhn was doing very well with his fall album and his Christmas album. It feels like it's the dark of night, but there's still like this innocence. It's like seeing a little kid play out in the middle of a really dark, snowy street, but like at 2 a.m. in the morning. There's just something creepy about that, and that is essentially what Snivel by the Pond is. It's this creepy creature that is surrounded by this innocence. It's just, I don't know, it's so perfectly well done. So it's this creepy waltz that builds, and the build that it has is so all-encompassing that I can't help but be moved by the end of it. Terrence has that same thing, but instead of like being subtly creepy, this thing is like full on in your face. You approach the child, and the child turns around and its face is just full of razor sharp teeth, essentially, within Terrence. So Terrence has that really dark, that very, like, instead of being like whimsical in a dark atmosphere, this thing is just full on darkness, and you're like, what is going on? But even then, even within this darkness, by the end, when it resolves itself, it is this sheer joy. Like, you get to this creature, you see it's this horrifying monster, but then you realize, no, there's more than just what the monster's presenting. You realize that this monster's actually that little kid that's still scared, and you gotta, you know, hang out with it, and you realize this is actually a really cool kid to hang out with. So, I mean, I know this metaphor is getting pretty insane, but that's kind of the atmosphere that I'm getting with this music. This is the kind of feels that I'm getting when I'm listening to this this particular track. Now, I've gushed, and I've praised, and I've just laid it all out there. But there's one thing about this album that I can't overlook, and I tried, but I can't do it, guys. I can't sit here and just praise this album to the nine heavens without bursting somebody's bubble. This album is a paint-by-numbers copy of Grace for Drowning from Steven Wilson. I can't not see it. And this is very apparent in The Nest of Evil. It sounds so much like it could have been lifted off that album, especially with the fan base that Victor is going for. We would have heard that, and instead of it being like an homage, instead of it being like, hey, I'm using some of the styles here, it's just like full on going for it. The dark atmosphere, the acoustic sets, the playing with technology to see how it can fit. I mean, all you need to do is listen to that second track and be like, yeah, this is from Grace from Drowning. And it's, maybe it's the Greta Van Fleet of progressive rock of this year, where, you know, instead of it being like an homage or it being like, hey, we're a throwback to the 70s, this is like, hey, we're a throwback to that early 2010s. Yeah, Nest of Evil is like a straight up ripoff of like track 1, of like Grace for Drowning, the title one, Deformed to Form a Star, like all those really juicy, deep, like Raider, and I believe it is in Terrence, where it sounds exactly like Raider 2 or Rainer 2, where you even have like that really dark piano work where it's like dun dun, and then you have like the guy that just kind of very subtly singing dun 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 dun. Like it's the same note sequences as well, and I'm like, whoa, that's like a straight up ripoff. Like if Steven Wilson doesn't hear this and be like, guy, maybe you want to get some royalties my way, I'd be almost surprised. So yeah, that was a little bit of a drawback, and the other big drawback of this album is the last song of Abyssal Bloom. It's a great song, it's the longest song, and I know that he was trying to make this big finishing epic, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it as much as I had the previous tracks, and maybe it's just because at this point the influences have been so apparent that it was a little bit harder to get into. And I also don't know if that big play out at the end really works, where it's just that really fast-paced guitar work, the double kick bass drum. It didn't, like this play out that encompasses the last like 5 minutes of the track, I don't know if it quite landed as much as I think he was trying to make it. Like it was almost like this big deliverance type of a song, and I don't know if it quite landed as hard as he was hoping it would. But I mean, this is a really interesting album. This is one that I really highly recommend you check out. I keep wavering back and forth as to what I want to rate it, because in one hand, I love it with my whole heart. I really, really do. But on the other hand, I also see that the flaws do eclipse why I love it so much. Like, I can't listen to this album without wanting to really sit down and listen to Grace for Drowning. That's kind of where I'm leaning between this one. It's a little bit of a splitting hairs, bouncing between the two, because I wouldn't rate it any lower than pick this up in physical format, because it is an amazing album. But I don't know if I can really go whole in and say I love it with my whole heart. So I love it enough with my whole heart to pick it up in physical format. How's that? There you go. There's my rating for it. What did you guys think? I know that this album's getting a lot of buzz, so let me know of your own thoughts about this album by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out. Too many memories, I need a new start.